Hurricane Dorian may be sparing Puerto Rico's main island from its very worst, but the Virgin Islands are taking a direct hit today. And in Puerto Rico, many are watching to see how well the island's electrical grid holds up after an overhaul. All of these islands suffered massive damage during the hurricanes of 2017. Danica Cotto has reported on the preparations and aftermath of prior hurricanes. She covers the Caribbean for the Associated Press, and she joins us again this evening by Skype. Danica, welcome back to the NewsHour. So tell us, what is the very latest you know on how this storm hit, how it affected the Virgin Islands?
Well, the brunt of the storm hit mostly St. Thomas, which experienced very heavy rains. We're still trying to get a hold of officials there. I spoke with people in the BVI, which lies just east or about northeast of St. Thomas, and they reported flooding, but no major damage. And in Puerto Rico, there was, a lot of joy, or reserved joy at least, on the main island, given that Dorian changed its path from overnight from affecting the southwest part of Puerto Rico to just glancing the northeast part. Tonight, there's still, tropical force storm winds expected for the northeast part of the island, but the storm is making its way out of the Caribbean.
But I know when I talked to you last night, Puerto Rico was bracing for this storm, and it had to be an enormous relief.
It's a huge relief for many on the Big Island. Many people went to bed worried, about whether they were going to have power in the morning, whether they would have enough supplies, food, water. But when they woke up and they saw that most of the storm, was going to cover the northeast part, and then throughout the day it kept moving further and further east. The concern right now is for the tiny Puerto Rican islands of Culebra and Vieques. They lie just east of the main island of Puerto Rico, and it's, a very popular tourist destination. I spoke to one of the mayors there, and he said that partly he's relieved because there are no rivers on these islands. So, they don't expect too much flooding, and there's not really mountains, so there's no risk of landslides. But even then, power outages do remain a risk.
And as we were mentioning, of course, and as you know so well, all of these islands took a massive hit in 2017 from the big storms, both Maria and these islands it's taken them a long time to recover. How has that affected their ability to prepare for this year's storms?
Well, if you speak with government officials in Puerto Rico, they say that they're prepared, that they've learned their lesson, but there's still about 30,000 blue tarps that serve as roofs throughout the island. In addition, the electrical grid remains very shaky. There's still power outages. Even with the minor rain that we experienced today, there were some power outages ranging from anywhere from 100 customers to a couple thousand being without power, albeit briefly. But many of these islands are still struggling to recover, especially the smaller ones, BVI, USVI. USVI, was affected by both Hurricane Irma and Maria, which hit in September 2017.
And right now, what we are told, Danica, is that this storm is headed to the east coast of Florida, the mainland U.S. How much do we know from the forecasters at this point about that?
It's a bit too early to say. The forecasters at the National Hurricane Center say that people should be prepared, should expect a large storm along the southeast coast. And they do say that they would have a better idea once the storm gets stronger, once it has a more clearly defined center. Forecasters say that the forecast would not change that much as opposed to Dorian, when it was still a tropical storm. When it's poorly organized, it's very hard to say where exactly it will go. And as we saw, the path changed several times. So once it gets stronger, forecasters believe that it will be easier to predict where exactly it will land and sort of the future path it will take in these coming days.
A Category 1 at this point, and I guess some of the forecasters saying it could grow possibly to a Category 3. Danica Cotto, thank you very much. We appreciate your talking to us for the second night in a row. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.